Hello everybody, Ross Madden here. Welcome to the show. This is Sunday morning and I am just on a little stroll and I'm thinking about the gender wage gap and I want to talk about some ideas I'm having. So the very first thing whenever someone brings up the wage gap is you got to figure out how much information they have about it. And a great way to figure that out is to ask them, what do you think the wage gap is right now? Now if they say 77 cents, that study is coming straight from a global sample, which includes China, which includes Saudi Arabia. So if you're going to talk about the global sample, you should probably focus on those nations, Saudi Arabia, and try and change their laws, not the American laws. Because if you look at the data for America, it's entirely different. The management positions are actually 51.5% are held by women. A majority of the professional management positions in America are actually held by women. So why do women feel like there is a pay gap, a wage gap, a gender job gap? It's not because they're not managers, although they may say that, they may claim that. There are actually more women managers than men in America. So maybe, if we're going to talk about evening things out, you've got to go the other direction. But they are really complaining about the lack of female board members, lack of female CEOs, chairmen of the board. These high-powered positions, the big head honcho positions, are the reasons why women are feeling like they're not involved in business as much as men are. The rain just kind of kicked off for a second. It's still a little raining, but we're gonna brave it. And so if you look at women, they make up 20% of the board members in America. And if you talk about just the CEOs, it's even less. It's only about 5% of CEOs are female. So why are so few women these high head honcho positions? That's really what they want to know. That's, I think, more of the complaint than even the wage gap. So why might a woman not be as likely to be in a boardroom position compared to a man? That is the question we are trying to answer, and that's really the question that needs to be answered if you want to address the female feelings about this. And I think it's important to at least address it. Whether it's right or wrong, we should address it and find out the truth about why they feel this way and if it's legitimate. So, when you look at why they are not in those boardroom positions, there are a few reasons why that have already been talked about. So Jordan Peterson and Stefan Molyneux have both said that a great reason for why women don't make as much money as men is because they are less agreeable. There's a trait called agreeableness, which makes them worse negotiators when it comes to not just their pay, but when you're negotiating on behalf of your company, you're not going to be as good if you're more agreeable, apparently. Well, this is an interesting lesson to teach women, because if Jordan is right and Stefan is right and women are being paid less because they are less agreeable when it comes to negotiating, then all they have to do is just be more disagreeable, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 they'll be paid way more and everything will be back to normal. I argue very differently. I think that we have entered a different time. Women are not the same as they were when Stefan and Jordan were growing up. Dr. Peterson. the women of today have learned not to be agreeable. They've learned that they are on equal footing, which is great, that's true, but they've learned to be disagreeable and to kind of argue even when you might not be right, just to disagree for the sake of disagreeing, because disagreeing is what women have in the past not done. So it's become kind of a crusade just to disagree for the sake of it. And when that happens, when a woman becomes really disagreeable, do you want to hire her? Do you want to have her working for you? See, this is the thing. We're teaching women who are already disagreeable. Women my age are not these super agreeable 1950s girls that cross their legs. No, they complain about things. They get what they want. Women of today get what they want. And so they do put their foot down. They do disagree. And now it's a question of, are we teaching women who are less productive just to complain more? Because when you disagree and you're right, think about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was super disagreeable. Steve Jobs was an incredible CEO for Apple. And he would come into a boardroom and he would insult people. And he would just get right to the point, and he would not care about feelings. He would focus on efficiency and just say what he felt. And if it hurt your feelings, too bad. Steve Jobs was kind of a dick if he wasn't so brilliant. The reason it worked for him was because he was brilliant. He was always freaking right, and his ideas worked. So let's say that Steve Jobs' ideas weren't so brilliant, he would just be a dick. He would just be a terrible person to be around. And so this is the question, this is the line that we are riding when you are disagreeable. You are riding that line of efficient versus dick. And when a woman wants to be more disagreeable, there's a chance that they are just training themselves to become bigger dicks. There is a fear within me that we are teaching women my age to be dicks, to be mean, to disagree and complain kind of for the sake of it, not because they've got a better idea and because their idea is going to change the world and it must be heard. It's not that. It's a lot of times just disagreeing to disagree because that's what they've been taught is right. And when you don't have the ideas to back it up, you just look really dumb. And you end up arguing bullheadedness for a 77 cent on the dollar wage gap, which is not based in fact. And it's just somebody who can't take that study and get by the emotional advantage that it gives you and say, okay, that study needs to be tossed out. What is the real wage gap? What is the real reason why I'm upset? What is the real problem here? Until that gets addressed, women are kind of not dealing with the problem. They're just complaining. All right, I'm at the end of my walk, but I've got one last thing to say. I want to end with solutions because this is a problem and I don't have the answer, but I think I should put forth some answers if I'm going to talk about the problem. So, ways that women can be paid more, better competitors, better negotiators without being disagreeable. You can train competitiveness. Do that through sports. It's the best way. Women who have done sports are generally better winners and better losers. They know how to lose. They've dealt with losing, and they've dealt with failure, and they've been told that was bad. They've been complained about. They've been criticized. So if you want to become someone who really can improve yourself, you need to get comfortable with criticism. And then if you really want to become a board member, if you really want to be a CEO, you want to be a Steve Jobs, you got to learn to empathize less. You have to think more about work and less about people and relationships. You have to think more about getting things done and less about how someone's going to feel if you tell them that what they did was bad. You're going to have to fire more people, even if they're your friends, because they did a bad job. Women on average are more risk averse. They are tending to start fewer companies. In fact, only 17% of startups are founded by women. So if women think that they are not making as many boardroom decisions, perhaps that's because they're not starting as many companies and thus not hiring the board members as frequently as men are. I mean, 83 to 17 is a pretty substantial difference. So, and that's not the only thing. Those people who get hired into those positions are largely very intelligent and very efficient, they lack empathy. Board members, CEOs are known for their lack of empathy and their focus and drive. That is what CEOs are known for. They put the business ahead of themselves, ahead of their relationships, ahead of their family. Business is first. Also, don't even think about having a family. No children if you are going to be a board member. As a mother, you are going to be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and that is not conducive to having children. That's basically dumping them into daycare all day, every day, 5-6 days a week, and you are just going to be completely swamped. You shouldn't have children if that's what you want to do. So those are two major things that if you want to be a big boss lady, empathize less and prepare to be childless your entire life. Or at least don't become a boss lady until your children are out of the home. Because you can't raise children successfully and be a CEO. It just can't be done. You will spend 70 hours a week working, and the remaining like 8 or 9 hours that you have energy to put forward towards your child will be in feeding them and getting them into bed, and you will not create the bond that you want with your child. You'll dump them into daycare weeks after having them, because CEOs don't get a lot of time off. They're required back at their job ASAP. So you get like 6, 7, 8 weeks of paid leave, and then you've got to head back to the office, drop the child off in daycare, and that's the beginning of the end of the mother-child bond. And from experience, I know that that's not something that the child wants. And so the mother should just prepare. If you want to be a big board member, don't have kids. Learn not to empathize. Learn that things matter more than relationships. So if you really want the wage gap, which isn't a wage gap, it's a board membership gap or a CEO gap. If you want that to close, learn to empathize less. Learn that you're never going to have any children and accept that, and then become really competitive and start caring more about things. Start caring more about getting things done than the relationships that you have. That is all the thoughts that I had on the wage gap today. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Ross Madden with the Truth of Think Tank. I hope you guys have a great Sunday.